Welcome back to a very important subject matter, and I think this the importance is global, not just to Lagos or to Nigeria.
And the concerns are around you right now. Right now.
Right now.
In fact, you are using it.
You are using it. You are guilty.
This is one of them. But the difference is
what?
Pollution.
Pollution, yes.
This one is not pollution.
It could be if you don't get rid of it in an appropriate manner.
Didn't you hear the word is present tense?
We're talking about addressing plastic pollution, which has become a real problem, really, especially in Lagos State where we are. Everybody wants to be Lagos. The bigger the population, the more problematic waste management is, and then the more problematic the management of that waste that doesn't disintegrate. So
non-degradable.
Non-degradable. So we're right. Plastic pollution is a pressing issue that affects the environment on a global scale. I think I mentioned that earlier. Even like what we know. The excessive use of plastics has led to an increase in plastic waste that is not only harmful to wildlife and marine ecosystems, but also poses significant threats to human health. Therefore, it's crucial to address plastic pollution before it worsens. According to the United Nations Environment Programme, plastic has become ubiquitous in our lives, but it hasn't always been this way. In the mid-20th century, plastic production was relatively low, and so was plastic waste. However, from the 1970s through to the 1900s, plastic waste generation increased dramatically, reflecting a surge in production, and in the early 2000s, plastic waste generation skyrocketed, surpassing the previous 40 years' production, and so on and so on. We can go on and on and on about this, but we are going to talk about it. Adedamla Ogunsesan is the Director, Technical Programs, Nigerian Conservation Foundation. He joins us. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today. And we also have Olusomi Oduguwa, Head of Communications and Corporate Branding, Nigerian Conservation Foundation. He also joins us in the studio today. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Maybe for clarity. I'm sorry, Shola. Joke, I'm here again. No, don't worry. You know why, so don't even say. Define plastic pollution. Here is why. You know, we jokingly said the other time that it could be pollution, but sometimes, even if it is the English language, it can have different meanings or communicate different meanings if one is not clear on what it is. So, beyond the technicalities, what do we mean by plastic pollution?
Specifically, when you dispose of plastic inappropriately, and it becomes a challenge, both either to the ecology or humans.
So essentially, it's post-disposal.
That's the main issue, because at one point, it is quite useful. It's a means. The way it came from, it shows that mobility, human mobility, brought out the necessity. Things used to be in bottled, you know, and because we are not as mobile as this, but as the world become more mobile, we're on the go, and you cannot take bottles around. Then the plastic came into the show. Then as we became more mobile, the issue of how do we dispose it becomes an issue. So for four of us, if we had to take a drink inside a plastic, the means of disposal will tell us whether this place becomes littered or it's clean after disposal, after usage. And so that's important, that having plastic is actually not the challenge, but how do we manage post-usage? It's a very important thing across different landscapes.
Perhaps one of the challenges there, Mr. Oduguwa, is as Joke, chronicled the history,
yes,
or the evolution of our use of these Okay, maybe I should use single-use plastics in most cases because sometimes some of them are reusable. In most cases, some of them are not reusable. So perhaps, and I think it is also one of the challenges of innovation. We take the innovation, but the transition is usually something we don't. We look at the solution, but we don't look at. Yeah, we don't pay attention to some. Things that follow. So, do you see that? How significant is that?
Well, of course, this is, like you rightly said, it's a critical issue and something that we need to really focus and zone in on. Of course, because plastic, like you also rightfully mentioned, it's something that we practically use in our day-to-day life. Every point now we use plastic. Like I highlighted some parts and components of our phones. Plastics were used to design it. You know, even on the go, when people take water, it's something that's constantly being used. But when we now look at the transition and how people use it, you know, and that's why we have issues sometimes. You see recently, with the rainy season just over, you see the island and how flooded it got. And the issues that some people practically had in their homes. And, you know, it now begs the question, how you manage this plastic? Where does it result to? You know, for lack of proper management, some of these plastics find their way to the drainage to clog the waterways. And you know, Lagos being a coastal community, this thing really affects us. And so it now begs the question on how do we pay attention to transitioning this plastic, like you mentioned, and that's where the key component comes about recycling. Recycling, so we like to paint the different R's that we have: recycling, refusing, reusing. So until all of these vital components now come to play. So after, like you pointed out, after you drink your water, what do you do with the plastic? What do you do with it? Where do you dispose it of? And so I think proper management is key, talking about the transition from the usage to properly managing and then putting it back into the system.
Yeah, really, Mr. Ogunsesan, I mean, he said quite a lot, and I beg to say that awareness also plays, you know, a huge part in this. The 3 R's. I mean, I know about it. He knows about it. I beg to differ that, you know, the regular people don't care. They just continue. You know, there's a particular shop that's I know of. It's a Nigerian thing. They sell your plastic. If you want to, once you clear at the counter, you buy a plastic bag to put your things in. If you don't have, they have cartons that they used to deliver their goods to the shop. You can go away with the cartons. That way, they get rid of their cartons. You, the consumer, you know, you go away with your goods in it if you so choose, and then you can discard if you like. But then you buy a plastic bag. They sell the plastic bags to you. That's way, or they say bring your own plastic bags if you want to shop with us. You know, that's a good way of recycling or ensuring that you don't have so much of that, you know, in the society. So you see people, you know, but how does this awareness, you know, get to who it's supposed to get to? Instead of saying these to people, why don't we enforce, you know, all these bukaterias and restaurants that also offer to sell things, food to you in plastics, to say, tell people to bring their own food flasks if they want to buy at your shop. That way, people come along with their stuff, buy their food and go away. No plastics involved. Because we're going to get home and find a way of throwing the plastic somewhere because you can't get rid of it. So there's more production of plastic. It keeps piling up. How do we get rid of it? That's the only way, I think.
Well, I would like to come from something a bit different, and is the economics. Now, for every time there's a purchase of a groceries, and you issue out a single-use nylon plastics, it also eats at your profits because it's part of the packaging people are expecting. Now, with payment, people now get more money in their pocket because the packaging component of what most shops have to pay for is reducing. So there's actually more money in your pocket if you look at it from that angle. Talking about awareness and people, sometimes they are around you are not properly disposed. So the rally helps us to speak to all these different spectrum of people, corporate bodies, the government themselves, they're involved, and it helps us to push for change in policy. Because now we find out there's a need for this, That's one of the things that led to the ban of single plastic use. And so the idea is that this rally would sensitize people more, give us an opportunity to talk to a lot of people and point out things to them. Because as we are passing, you'll be passing beside, drainages, and we tell them, you can see it's practical. And you can say, if this happens continuously and there's a downpour now, where does the water go? It deflects water into your homes, into your shops, and thereby leading to economic loss. So the idea is to continuously engage people, and working with Lagos State government is very key as the leading economy in Nigeria.
It's interesting that you said on the one hand that this initiative, this advocacy has been going on for quite a while, for a number of years. What inroads, maybe I should ask it this way, what are the lessons you have? What are the things you've discovered? Mr. Oduguwa was speaking earlier, talked about need for attitudinal change. What are the things that you have discovered over the years, and what are the gaps, from on the one hand from the people, and the gaps also from the government side, particularly the local government administrations?
Well, it helps us to engage policymakers and tell them the need. And sometimes a whole policy you don't really need to change, but you need to change the key things and strategies there. It also helps us to talk to corporate bodies who are in the line of packaging. It also helps us to talk about the need to put finances. It's quite you'll be shocked that it's more difficult, it's more expensive to use recycled material. And that's one of the reasons why people keep churning it out, because recycling is more expensive. You pointed something out about fast-moving restaurants. Now, if you go to any of the big restaurants, you have an opportunity of getting your food in degradable material, plastics, paper pack, but it's more expensive. So we might be looking at intervention to reduce the cost of that kind of production as support to reduce plastic waste. We might also be looking at changing policy to encourage circular economy. It's huge. If you are recycling something about 10% of 2.5 million metric ton, that's a huge economic loss, which is also becoming an ecological problem. So this really helps us to have that kind of interaction. Recyclers will also be part of the work, and so it's an opportunity to network, it's an opportunity to talk to people, it's an opportunity to showcase some of the things people are using plastic. A lot of our painters and artists are now creative, using plastic waste as a means of their arts. And so these are things and opportunity. And children will be part of it. And we have been deliberate about that. We put recycled bins across our conservation clubs. And what we encourage them to do, you need a stencil, a cardboard. From the plastic waste, you can generate fund for your conservation club. So these will be things we'll be talking about. For new schools, we encourage them to have a conservation club, to have recycle bins, which will link them up to recyclers. And so we're deliberately creating value chain, at the same time supporting government to look at new policy issues that will help to reduce plastic pollution.
Interesting. What Mr. Ogunsesan just said now just brings something interesting to mind.
Yes.
Social media.
Yeah. All right.
As a way of communicating,
yes,
this very, very important initiative. What are the limitations we are having from engaging these stakeholders, getting some of the influencers, we call them,
right,
in the social media space, yes, in on this conversation? Because if they also see how important it is,
yes, maybe
we will have some support from them.
Very true. Yeah, correct. And also, taking the cue for waste, but like also mentioned something very important and unique about this year's rally that we have going to discovery. We also realize a very important fact is that a large chunk of Nigeria's population, about 50% of the country's population are young people under 35.
More than 50%.
More than 50%. Yeah. And so it begs the question that anything you are doing, any advocacy, any awareness, any drive you are doing, you have to target this particular demographic. And how do you reach them? You have to curate your message specifically for them. And that's the beautiful thing about this year's Work for Nature Rally, because it's going to be taking place in Yabatek, which is a school, of course, the school environment, and moving from the streets and taking the message directly to where you find the young people. But also by an extension, to also look at your question, social media is a very interesting component. And also we realize that from the course of our work, we realize that oftentimes environmental message is not the first point of call for young people per se. And so one thing that we try to do is to find interesting ways to make the message more appealing for them. And what do we do that? We also did do that, but of course now there's a huge crave and desire for instance, for podcasts. And that's something that we've introduced as an organization. We have a new podcast called the Niger Eco Vibes podcast that helps to break down this supposedly huge environmental message into small bits and chunks and relatable ways that younger people can flow the message. So that's one way we are looking to attract and tackle this issue, this challenge you mentioned. By default, younger people are not so interested in the environment. Their thinking is like, okay, before I was born, the environment was there, nature is here. I'm here, it's still here. After I'm gone, it will still be here. So why do what's the difference? But now I'm trying to draw the attention to the fact that sustainability, how you use nature, how you use the environment, how you interact with the environment plays a key role in how the next generation will find it. And so we try to pass across this message to them in interesting ways, telling stories about it, using methods they can communicate. And of course, we have influencers coming on board on our podcast to liaise with us and break down the message in ways that the younger generation can assimilate.
Perhaps it might also help to let them know the money-making parts.
Yes.
Thank you. The money-making part.
I've seen some recycling initiatives. In fact, I think we hosted someone on ChannelsTelevision recently who was talking about how they used PET bottles to build houses that are bulletproof.
Interesting.
And, well, needless to say, it's very expensive to build such a house. But, you know, that's one. I've also seen someone use, some kind of impossible stuff to make clothes, and he wore it into the studio.
Interesting. Sorry, I was also going to add to that. You know, interesting, he talked about the conservation schools we have. We have over 600 conservation clubs across secondary schools in Nigeria. And so what we're trying to do is, because behavior change is very key for us, and so we understand that you have to catch people young while in their formative stage and let this message, let them imbibe.
It's the opportunities in there we need to create. Yes, I remember now. Yes. The lady said she used old tires.
Right.
To convert old tires into clothes. Into shoes, into bags.
Yes.
Let me say it in pidgin. My oval was gasted and my flabber was whelmed. So I think maybe that's another angle of the communication.
Yes, and I think that's also something we do at NCA, because for us we usually call it upcycling with secondary schools. This tire you talked about, they use it as part of, instead of this table now, they use tires to come up with these things. They use plastic to come up with flower vases. And also teach them, they can also, like you mentioned, also explain to them you can monetize these things. And so that also gets them, that also piques their interest. And so I think this is a good way to drive this message.
I really don't understand. I don't know how you're going to do it, but to tell people that recycled stuff are good, but then you have to go and pick them from place to place. That's another thing that will probably bust their brains. But I'll leave that to you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you so much.
Olusomi Oduguwa is Head of Communication and Corporate Branding, Nigerian Conservation Foundation. We appreciate your time as well as Mr. Adedamla Ogunsesan, Director, Technical Programs, Nigerian Conservation Foundation. We appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.